the station, there's a boy without a name, and he is there for me, with a message in his hand and a picture that she left when she was there for me. 'Cause we are in another time, we have to redefine without you. You're gonna see me run. We are in another time, we have to redefine without you. You're gonna see me run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run, run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run. There's still a point realized for you, and then you know that it flows right through your veins, not a cover to maintain, and you're not there with me. 'Cause we are in another time, we have to redefine without you. You're gonna see me run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run, run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run. Not another message, 'cause I was not invested, but you were only guessing from the picture that she left. Don't send another message, 'cause I am not invested, but you were only guessing from the picture that she left when she was there. Run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run, run, 'cause I'm better without you. You're gonna see me run, you're gonna see me run.
Hello and welcome to the Hidden Door live show. Hidden Door, Edinburgh's very own alternative arts festival, is currently running these live streaming shows to showcase the best emerging talent in Scotland, while so much of the infrastructure that we need to use for the arts has been completely decimated by the coronavirus pandemic. We've had to postpone our very own festival, but we are reorganising it for May next year, which is really exciting. And many of the artists and performers that you'll meet and get to see on these live shows will be being featured at the festival. So hopefully these shows will give you maybe a bit of an insight into what they do and give you something to look forward to next May as well. And my goodness, don't we all need something to look forward to? There's so much talent in this country, and it's always really blown me away. It's actually why we started Hidden Door in the first place, was as a way to kind of try and create opportunity for people who were just starting out, but people who were extremely talented and needed an outlet for what they were doing. And it's really heartbreaking that pretty much every possible way in which people who are starting out on their career, all the opportunities that they would normally be able to try and create for themselves have been are no longer available to them. So these live shows are really important, actually, and really important as a way to kind of try and show what people are doing and show that people are still doing stuff, still making stuff, that the creative community in Scotland is still alive and kicking. And the audience, you know, for them is really important. So that's you. So thank you so much for popping in and watching tonight. We really, really appreciate it. You just heard, one of those amazingly talented people. That was fourth daughter playing for us there. She's going to be back a wee bit later on with a wee bit of chat and a couple more tunes to please our ears. But before that, we've got a few other things to show you tonight. So I'll tell you a little bit about the show. We've got dancer Tony Mills popping by for a quick chat, telling us a little bit about some of the things that he's been doing. And we'll be interviewing Patrick J. O'Reilly from Belfast's Tinderbox Theatre Company about some really exciting work that they're doing online as a theatre company. And as well as more music from Fourth Daughter, I'm delighted to say that we're being joined by another musician this evening. In fact, our very first guest, Esther Swift. So, where do we start with Esther? Harpist, composer, singer, Esther Swift is internationally recognised for her contribution to the pedal harp and her distinct compositions and songwriting. As well as her own critically acclaimed composition, she's worked with the Unthanks, Aidan O'Rourke, Jimmy Goodwin, Siobhan Wilson, to name just a few. She's received many prestigious composition commissions, such as from Manchester Jazz Festival. She's performed in famous venues like the Wigmore Hall and the Glasgow Concert Hall. And not content with being a famous solo harpologist, Esther has released 3 albums as one half of acclaimed duo 12th Day, performing all over the world, and is part of Clouds Harp Quartet, a groundbreaking harp ensemble that have played all across the UK. Welcome, Esther.
Oh, thanks so much, David, for the intro. It's so nice to be here with you online.
It's a pleasure. I was reading your biography, and it really seems as though the harp has taken you all over the world. You performed as far afield as Malaysia, Vietnam, and even Mongolia. Are you regretting having taken up such a cumbersome and heavy instrument?
No, I mean, there are certainly moments late at night after gigs that there's something I'd rather be doing with my time than hiking the harp downstairs into my van. But it's a real privilege to get to take this kind of relatively unknown instrument to corners of the world where it's perhaps not been familiar until I've introduced it. And yeah, it's something that I've been training for my whole life. I think when you start learning the harp, a big part of training for being a harpist is how to lift it properly. So yeah, I feel strong and able at the moment.
That's amazing. So it's interesting you talk about that, as you have been on all these different parts of the world. Is the harp a kind of uniquely kind of European instrument, or are there sort of versions of the harps in different cultures that you visited?
Yeah, there's a Paraguayan harp, and there's a few different kinds of Celtic harp, including a lap harp, which is an ancient instrument actually. But this particular instrument that I'm playing is a pedal harp, and that was only, I'll get a bit geeky on you now, that was only created in the late 18th century. So this is defined as a double action pedal harp for anyone who's interested.
Double action, yeah, that's my favourite kind of pedal harp, definitely. So, is it quite hard to maintain? How often do you break a string?
These top strings snap probably every year and a half or so. And then the bass string is slightly less frequently, maybe every 2 years or thereabouts. And they make a really amazing sound when they snap. It's like a gun going off. It's kind of terrifying, but it keeps you on your toes.
Is it a bit dangerous? You have to duck, break a window?
Well, I mean, you hear horror stories about harpists having their eyes taken out, but I think it's. I don't know how true they are. I don't know how based on fact they are.
Well, hopefully that won't happen tonight on the live stream. I think you're going to maybe play a tune for us. But I was going to say to our audience out there, if you want to ask any questions to Esther, it's not every day you get to ask a harp player, the questions you've been burning to ask all these years. Pop them in the comments during Esther's piece of music, and we'll see if we can ask them and see if we can get Esther to answer. But Esther, you're going to play us a tune just now, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're going to play?
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to play a song which is a setting of a Carol Ann Duffy poem, which is called Child Sleep. And this is originally for 11-piece band, who or all my friends actually, all members of the band, I chose because I love their playing. And that's something that I like to do when I'm writing for people, is choose the people over the instruments. And so this is set for 4 harps, for string trio, for percussion, for piano, for tenor sax, and for trombone. And it's called Child Sleep, and it's a series of 7 poem settings, and this is like the opening setting. And yeah, Caroline Duffy is just a real inspiration to me, because she is Scottish, obviously, but she is from Manchester, and I sort of have a bit of an affinity with her because I studied in Manchester, and she sort of there's loads of nice ties between Manchester and Glasgow, I think. So this is called Child Sleep. Sorry about my squeaky chair. At the edge of my child's sleep, hearing her breathe, and although I could not enter there, I could not breathe. I could not Her sleep was a small wood covered in flowers. Peaceful, sacred, a card in ours, a card in ours. And she was the spirit that lived in the heart of such woods, without time, without history, wordlessly good. Spoke her name, a pebble dropped in the still night, and saw her stirring cupping soft light, cupping
Wow. Thanks, Esther. That was really quite incredible.
Hey, David.
Got lots of questions I want to ask you. Someone's just popped a little question into the comment stream there, just a little bit about what's your favorite band or musician, and how much does that influence your writing? Do you have a kind of main influence?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I love Kate Bush, Bjork, Radiohead. I love lots of classical musicians, like lots of minimalist composers, and lots of I like Britain a lot, Debussy, a lot of romantic composers, Ravel. I love contemporary music makers, electronic music. Basically, it's quite a broad sort of array of influences in my music. Yeah, I suppose for singing stuff, Kate Bush, Bjork are big influences on me, I'd say. And Bjork is just so diverse with her instrumentation and her collaborations in her albums. They're so varied and exciting, and she takes influence from and like specialists in jazz and classical and loads of different parts of the world. So yeah, she's at the moment I'm going through a bit of a Bjork phase. Actually, I've been listening to her albums. I'm trying to in order chronologically through lockdown and sort of trying to do a study on them, which has been a nice way to spend my time in lockdown.
That's amazing. Look forward to kind of seeing maybe the costume influence as well coming into your music too. I was going to ask you a few more questions about the composition side of things, because you obviously that's very much part of your career. It's not just a harp player, but you're a composer too. And I was wondering how compositions kind of work for you, and how do you sort of start off? Do you start with sort of inspiration, or do you sort of start by getting a commission and treating it more like a job? How does it work for you?
Well, for my songwriting, it's been something I've just sort of always done, and is inspired by my surroundings, and a lot of my songs are inspired by nature and people that I meet, and that's kind of like a rolling deadline, I guess, but with more like bigger instrumentation commissions, like I've written for chamber orchestra in the past. I find it much better to have like a concept and a deadline for that. I find it quite hard to start that without having like an end goal, if that makes sense. Because it's just quite a daunting prospect. It's a lot of work, obviously, doing something like that. So yeah, the more you can be supported, I think, doing something like that, the easier it is to kind of feed yourself, give yourself essentially the time that it takes to do those big pieces. So, yeah.
And do you compose with a specific sort of ensemble in mind, or a specific sort of individuals?
I prefer to write for individuals. Yeah, I guess I'm inspired by musicians that I love anyway, and that I know personally quite often as well. And like their kind of character, I find really inspiring. Like their kind of personal touch in the way they play music. I really like writing for kind of the quirks of someone's personality. It's my favourite method.
Yeah, and I was reading as well in your biography that you said you'd just done a 20-day residency in Vietnam, like lugged the harp all the way over there. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I took the Clarsach over, actually, the Celtic harp, so it's slightly easier to cart over. It goes on a plane anyway. Yeah. It was amazing. That was working with 30 Vietnamese musicians, as well as 2 other Scottish musicians who were Tom Bancroft and David Shedden, the piper David Shedden, and drummer and founding member of Playtime, Tom Bancroft. And we were working with 30 Vietnamese musicians who were traditional musicians from different regions around Vietnam. And this was the first time a project like this had been made in Vietnam. And it was just so inspiring to see the different traditions coming together and to create something completely new and completely collaborative using their traditions from each place. And it was a real bonding experience, I think, for the music, because a lot of the traditional kind of the pockets of tradition around the country are dying out. And so this was basically an opportunity for them to revitalise the tradition over there. And they wanted to take Scotland as like an example of a living tradition and an example of a tradition that's sort of facilitates old and new artists. So those wanting to kind of take the tradition forward, if that makes sense.
Well, that's really interesting. So do they see Scotland as being a place that has a sort of an alive tradition when it comes to music?
Yeah, I think we're so lucky here because we've got the Fèis and we've got the Mod, so we've got like a really thriving Gaelic tradition and the Scots tradition. We've got really good island traditions, and all of these places like have thriving kind of music that is quite cool as well. It's quite cool to be a traditional musician and to play the fiddle and to play tunes and go to sessions. And it really engages like the younger generation. So yeah, I feel so lucky to have had that and feel like super connected to my culture, to my country, and yeah.
That's really interesting, because one of the ideas I was kind of interested in sort of pursuing for this show was sort of maybe asking a little bit about what kind of new territories people had explored or found themselves moving into exploring, and obviously the harp very much associated with being a sort of traditional instrument, but I would say that you're a very innovative musician. What's your kind of approach to innovation? How do you make that come about with such a traditional kind of set of expectations around what you do?
Well, I think, yeah, as I said before, I'm quite lucky because the pedal harp is still a relatively new instrument. And so, yeah, there's still lots of sounds that are kind of relatively unexplored on this instrument. And it's so massive. So there's a lot to play with physically. And so, yeah, I really love electronic music, as I said, and playing things that perhaps aren't associated with the harp, and making them feel true and feel genuine for me as a musician. Yeah,
amazing. So look, you're going to play another tune for us, I think. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the track is, and then just crack in?
Yeah, I'm going to play another Caroline Duffy poem from my big band piece, and this is called Art, and it's about the fragility of art and versus the fragility of a relationship, which is quite a poignant topic at the moment, seeing as a lot of artists, individual artists and art centres are kind of under threat at the moment. So leaving you on a jolly note there, this is Art. Of our blood.
chilling marble forecast, locked into soundless dawn. Promises resolved into poems, page print for the dried flowers of our voice, and the Oscar winning movie and your heart and where my soul sang. The Oscar winning movie and your heart and where my soul sang. The Oscar winning movie and your heart and where my soul sang. The Oscar winning movie and your heart and where my soul sang. The Oscar winning movie and your heart and where my soul croaking heart, croaking heart, croaking
Wow, thank you so much, Esther Swift. And guys, thank you so much for all the positive thumbs up and hearts that you're firing all over the live stream here. Really appreciate it. And if you want to see Esther Swift live with a large ensemble, I don't know, maybe you should think about buying some tickets for Hidden Door. I'm not saying anything particular about that, but maybe just something to think about. Anyway, let's move on to our next guest for this evening. Our next guest is a founder member of Random Aspects B-Boy crew. He hails from the Orkney Isles. Tony Mills, since giving up veterinary surgery whites for ballet tights, has worked with Fresh Mess Dance Company, State of Emergency, Off Kilter, Iron Oxide, Curious Seed, David Hughes Dance Productions, All or Nothing, Russian physical theatre maestros Derevo, and the international street dance show Blaze, which toured to Thailand, Russia, Australia, London and Taiwan. Tony is a keen ambassador for the breakdance scene in Scotland and has been involved in the production and hosting of major dance events, including Castle Rock's Breakdance Championships and the Scottish leg of the National Breaking Convention tours from 2007 to 2014. Tony continually creates work for his own company, Room to Manoeuvre, which has seen the company perform all across the UK and internationally. Tony is a die-hard coffee fan and loves a croissant. Before we meet Tony, let's have a little look at some clips of him in action. Give us an idea. Hi, Tony Mills. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Dave. Yeah, I'm all good. I just put my hands together for Esther. Smashed it.
Yeah, totally smashed it. Hey, listen, you're actually our first dancer on any of these live stream shows. So I want to ask you a little bit about your creative process. Something like music, we've got notation, with theatre, a script, visual art, sketches or photographs. But with dance, how do you start? How do you start coming up with your pieces?
Yeah, so how does the magic happen? With great difficulty, I would say. Yeah, so for me personally, a lot of my work has been quite visual. So I've kind of seen the big picture and then kind of worked my way sort of backwards and, try to figure out how to make it happen. So that's something that I found that I tend to do. And then later on, as I've gone down the road and stuff like that, I've tried to reverse that. So I tried to work with the building blocks of whatever the dance steps and the concept ideas, and then make the bigger picture. I mean, it's really, you've just got to be really open to your sources of kind of inspiration. Like I've recently been listening to the soundtrack of Homecoming season 2. I don't know if anyone's been watching. I watched the first one with Julia Roberts, and then I got hooked on the second one. But as I was watching it, I was like, what is this music? The music was just it was just totally drawing me in. I'd forgotten about what was going on the show, and the music was just drawing me in. And then I found it, and I've been listening to that quite a lot. And I was listening to the music; it kind of conjures up images and words, and makes you want to move in a certain way and stuff like that. So with music, sometimes, a lot of dance. Sometimes a lot of dance you'll see a lot of art. It's like making a statement or something like that. So one thing I like to work with is I like to try and find the kind of humanity behind, like within the dance in a sense. So something that doesn't matter. So my sort of background was in like hip hop and then training in contemporary dance and stuff like that. And then I kind of mixed the two together with a bit of physical theater. And sometimes you can come and see a show and it's about hip hop or it's like ballet, and you might not relate to it because you're not from that world or you've not done any of it or stuff like that. It's too dense to get into. So I like to think if you can work with the dance form in a way where you can discover the humanity behind it, like the people behind it, and then try and pull that out, and then you put the dance form on top, then I think that's something, doesn't matter what you do, whether it's hip hop or whether it's ballet, whether it's whatever, rumba, and you want to make a show about it, I think then you can communicate with people because ultimately that's what you're trying to do, So all different kinds of ways of making a dance. I mean, I've got my few tricks, I've got a few tools. If I'm in the studio and I'm stuck and I'm like, I don't know what to do or whatever like that, I've got a few kind of like go-to tasks
like
and
what?
things like that I'll throw out. Well, I learned a great task, right, from this choreographer called Colin Poole, right? And I was working with him in a dance company in London, like many moons ago or whatever. And what he did was he created these a square, right, with 9 dots, right? And you got given the task, you have to move from each dot, yeah, not really leaving the floor, like not jumping, you had to stay close to the floor, use your hands, you could roll, you could slide, step, whatever, turn, but just essentially make a journey through these dots, right? And you're like, okay, fine. So we all did that as solos, right? And then the next stage was like, you got the dots like that, and then you just merge them a little bit. So you'd have a duet, and then at one point you'd sort of connect, and you'd have to try and figure out, how to negotiate that sort of connection, without trying to deviate too much from what you originally did, but, trying to find ways to sort of work with each other. And then gradually the dots go, until they eventually overlap. And then you can have a duo, a trio, a quartet. And it's a really cool way of like, you've got nothing, like you've got absolutely nothing. And from nothing, you just like, all of a sudden you've got a solo, you've got a duo, you've got loads of variations. And it creates really surprising, combinations and little dance sequences. And that's one thing I really like to do as well is like, I mean, we've seen how this, like the coronavirus, although it's an absolute tragedy, it's, we've got a lot of innovative things popping up. I mean, even this live show, people are trying to respond, like, how do we keep doing what we do? When you get backed into a corner, you've got to respond creatively. And it's a little bit the same. Well, there's one, way of approaching dance, if you're creating dance, is to sort of like put restrictions on it, put a rule on it. And therefore, when you've got that rule, okay, now I have to I can't dance like how I would do just if you put on some music, right? Now I've got a rule I've got to work with. I've got to move, and I've got to move in a much more creative manner in order, because I've got this kind of rules that's keeping me down, but I've got to find a way to move with it and stuff. So it's quite interesting. When you put restrictions on things, it actually causes people to actually become more creative.
Amazing, yeah. I was going to ask you as well, like, how do you make like a career like as a dancer? You obviously you started out in the Orkney Isles, well known for its breakdance scene, and like, have there been any sort of significant sort of watershed moments where you've thought, yeah, I am a dancer now?
Yeah, well, actually, I trained to be a vet, so I came all the way to Edinburgh, with my high hopes of like being a vet. Do you know what I mean? And then, literally a week after I graduated, I befriended a bunch of people in Edinburgh. One of them, a guy called Manoeuvre, who ran a dance company called Fresh Mess, which was kind of breakdance and everything. And I started taking classes at assembly rooms back in the day when Dance Space was there. And then, literally a week after I graduated, they offered me a job, and then I was in the Fringe. And then I worked with them for about 3 years. 3.5 years. And then I figured I can't blag it anymore, so I better go and do some dance training and everything. And it's like I always feel like, I don't know how other people feel, but for me, I've always felt like my dance career was like the image of me standing on a beach, and in the distance I can see a really nice like island. Like, oh, well, life looks pretty good over there. I'll just start swimming in that direction, So you get in the water and you start swimming and stuff like that. And after a while, you turn around and it's like, it's too far to go back, so I might as well just carry on. And it's a bit like that. You're just plugging away in the same direction and stuff, But I would say, like, there's maybe been a few professional things, but I think one personal thing was because, as I said, I was training to be a vet. I've got older brother, older sister. My brother was a dentist. My sister was studied law. My father did medicine, was a doctor and everything. So we all had to do something really responsible, and contribute to society and everything. And so there's a bit of strife, I mean, my parents did support me, they didn't make my life difficult or anything like that, but there was a bit of kind of like, when are you going to get a real job, son? And then I was at a wedding, my cousin's wedding, and I remember it so clearly, right? And the bride had done her dance and all the rest of it, and then got up and I was dancing with my mum, and then slowly she just started to back away from me. I was like, what's going on? And then everyone in the room started to back away, because they'd all heard that I'm this dancer, And they were like, okay, son, show us what you got and everything. So I had to do a little performance for them and everything, But what happened was, like, when I left, right, my dad caught up to me, and my dad's like, if he's going to say something serious, he always repeats himself, So he stops me, and he's like, son. I'm like, oh my God, what's he going to say, like that. And he was like, you can dance. Now, if you want singing lessons, I will pay for them, And so that was like, oh, I got the blessing, you know what I mean? And that does make a difference, if you want to. It's nice to know that, your family or whoever's closest to you and stuff like that are, they support what you do, so you're not getting in the ear like all the time. And then so professionally, I would say, I think there are certain surprises. Like sometimes people approach you and they want you to, I don't know, be a mentor, or they come to look into you for advice, or they want you to come and give a talk in your career and how you got there. And all of a sudden you realize, well, I never had the answers, but sometimes now people are kind of looking to you for answers or guidance and stuff like that. So you've sort of transitioned a little bit. I would say becoming a resident company at the Brunton Theatre, so I'm resident company at the Brunton Theatre now, was a big shift, because it's a shift in perception. You've no longer got, on your letters that you're sending to people, your 20 mils, flat 6, Dundas Crescent or something like that. It's like 20 mils, room to manoeuvre, Brunton Theatre. It's much more official, and even though you haven't changed per se, people perceive you a bit differently. They just somehow, they just take you a little bit more seriously, and that shifts the game when you're having discussions and you want to make things to happen, because you've actually got things to offer. You've got resources, you've got space, you've got a venue that you've got connections with that you can get somebody programmed in and stuff like that. So that was a big shift. And then getting work shown abroad. The first time you take your piece, you've been making it in your living room for about 6 months, using iMovie 6 or something like that. And then finally, like, you get a gig in a really nice theater in just outside Paris, and you get a great response, and that's quite sort of validating, I would say.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was hearing that you recently been doing work all the way over in China or in East Asia.
Yeah, so I attend, as is in the business of dance or in the cultural sector, you got to do a bit of networking. And I attend a few networking events, mostly in Europe. And I was at one, and there's a whole team from Scotland that go. This is an event called Tanzmesse in Dusseldorf. And there's lots of, there's like a booth area, like a sort of showcase area, whatever, and loads of booths. Everyone's kind of like promoting their work, their company, what they do, etc. And this guy came over to the booth where I was at, this short kind of Asian dude, and he was like quite direct. And he was like, apparently he'd heard about me from somebody else, and he was like, "You are hip hop contemporary choreographer. You will come and work with my dancers and stuff like that." And I was like, okay. And I didn't know if it was going to happen or not, because sometimes people talk the talk and stuff like that. And then, they sent me the plane ticket. And then, I went over to, it was Macau I went to, and the guy runs a sort of commercial dance studio, but he's trained in contemporary dance in Beijing and wants his dancers to kind of have that sort of contemporary influence along with their hip hop. And that's kind of like my bag in a way. And so I got to work with his dancers for 4 weeks, and we made a piece. And then that was in 2017. And then I've been going back every year, like working with them, developing like new works and everything like that. But what's been really good about it is that Macau was a great platform then to get into Hong Kong and connect with people in Hong Kong. And through meeting people in Hong Kong, I established a relationship with some people in China. So I was there teaching at a festival in 2018. And if you're working in Asia and stuff, like you need WeChat, right? Because that's how everybody does their business and stuff, Of course, it helps to speak Mandarin or Cantonese, but at least you got WeChat. And then the
emojis, just use emojis.
Loads of emojis, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then I just met a ton of people there, and there's just got chats going on and stuff like that to possibly go back, and also getting into Malaysia and in Singapore. So it's been, the last 3 years have really like expanded quite a lot in terms of the remit of what I do.
That's amazing. So that you've got a bit of video to show us from that, haven't you? Where's it from?
So that's correct. So we're going to see a little clip. It's from the first 2 years, 2017, 2018, working with the dancers in Macau, and also a little clip of me getting busy with a guy called Wei An, who's a great dancer based in Malaysia.
Okay, great. Let's fire on. Great stuff. So I believe, Tony, you've been more recently kind of moving into sort of organising festivals. Is that right?
That is correct. Like basically through getting into hip hop, I started like organizing jams and competitions with my friends, like the guys in my crew and everything. And then working with Break Convention, getting involved in helping them like co-produce a bit of their work and stuff. And then it just kind of built from there. And I had this, I luckily got onto the Culture 2014 program with an idea to mix dance and squash. And we did a show called Squish Squared that we toured around 17 squash courts around Scotland, all the way from like Shetland, apparently number one's best, Britain's top fish and chip shop apparently in Shetland at the time, all the way down from Shetland, all the way down to the borders and stuff. And that was a great experience. And I love the idea of sort of dance happening in kind of unusual spaces. So you quite familiar with a space and you go and you find something completely different. I like that juxtaposition.
Yep.
And then I thought to myself,
street.
Wouldn't it be a great idea if you could go into a leisure centre and it was like a theatre? You know, it was all kinds of different kind of stuff going on, but it's all sports related. And then 2018 was the year Young People, and myself and my producer that I worked with, a guy called Ed Lithwood, we put in for a funding bid to sort of do this concept of kind of dance and sport, but in a leisure centre, just take over the space. And we got it, and I'm based out in East Lothian, and it ended up being events happening in different locations around East Lothian, and we brought over international dance companies. We had 5 dance companies. It was a massive job, actually. Like, it was a huge job. Like, it became much bigger than I actually imagined it. But it was fantastic. It was fantastic because the whole thing was like, we work with young people, we work with the local people. You come, you can get a dance class, you see the show, like you see the combination of dance and sport, and then you get to try the sport afterwards. And people loved it. And we ended the whole thing with a show from a young Edinburgh-based synchronized swim team, and then we had a big pool party. And the really cool thing was we had some music playing on top. And the guys had an underwater speaker, so when you could dive in from the top, you go underneath, and the music was playing, which was pretty mad, So I loved that, and it was a huge,
amazing.
Yeah, it was a huge undertaking, but it's. I think I had a really good team, and it's that kind of thing. Like you've done a good job if on the last day you can just put my hands up. I'm going to go have a coffee. See you later, kind of thing.
Yeah. So are you going to do it again?
For sure, yeah. I'm actually one of the things that's happening over in Asia for me at the moment is I'm in conversation with the British Council in Hong Kong, and they've commissioned me to do some research and development to see if it's like a feasibility study to see if we can do the same kind of thing in Hong Kong. So at the moment, I'm sort of having Zoom chats and dialogue with some Hong Kong producers to see how that's going to work.
Wow, let's have a look at a bit of video for that. At Your Leisure, I think the festival was called. Is that right?
At Your Leisure.
Yeah, let's see that. Wow, I love it. I love the idea of taking an unusual venue and using it for a festival. Sounds really good.
Who did it first?
I don't know, but we're at kind of a funny position, aren't we, for festivals at the moment now? What's your feeling about it in terms of the future of festivals? Do you feel like hopeful, or do you feel it's actually pretty dicey here in the UK?
I feel like, I think in long term, yeah, obviously there's always going to be a hunger for people to participate and to make art and culture, for sure. But yeah, definitely, it's very dicey, man. It's real dicey. Like right now, there's quite a lot of funds are getting redistributed, and I've been lucky enough to get a couple of commissions, and there's a lot of commissions out happening now. So yeah, this year there's probably, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, of course, but yeah, I think there's a sort of interim period of people are going to be quite active, you know, because there's this kind of response to what's happening after the dust has kind of settled. But I do think like once the economy, when we start to really feel the effects of the economy and the whole furlough thing ending and people kind of getting back, and the UK kind of grinds back up to sort of speed, I think it's going to be real impact, you know, and I'm not quite sure what the outcome's going to be, but I know that, you know, people as a society and everything, that I know that we want to continue, you know, going to festivals and making things happen. And as I say, once you're backed into a corner like that, that's when I think people get really creative. So I am hopeful, I suppose, in the long term.
Good note to end on, Tony. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us tonight. It's been really nice chatting to you. Okay, so if you're around at the beginning of the show, you'll already have heard the irresistible, dreamy vocals and knack for a melody of our next guest, Fourth Daughter. Fourth Daughter is a solo project of Edinburgh-based electropop artist Emily Atkinson, raised on a strict diet of Kraftwerk, Tears for Fears, and Depeche Mode. These are the artists that have had a big influence on her own compositions with dreamy vocals and layered synths. Since her emergence in 2014 under previous guise Emily, she has supported Sylvan Esso at Hidden Door, no less, the Japanese House, S.G. Lewis, and Disney's own Sabrina Carpenter, not to be forgotten, and has most recently been listed as one of BBC Scotland's ones to watch in 2020. Welcome back, Fourth Daughter.
Thank you.
So tonight you're playing the piano for us, Emily. Is this how you normally start making your music?
No, I don't ever really, to be honest, sit at a piano. I quite like to work with the synths, and like I usually write tracks from like the beat up. So write a beat, then layer some synths, and then I'll start kind of adding vocals. I would never just sit at a piano anymore.
Wow. So, I mean, I really love your music. When I saw you play at Indoor, it, you know, completely blew me away what you were doing. And it's your voice that really stands out to me. Have you had special voice trickery training?
Yeah, I went to uni and studied a music degree. So yeah, and that my first instrument was voice. So yeah, I trained vocally.
Great. And I mentioned some of your influences in the intro there, but I was wondering if you could collaborate with someone or have a guest vocalist or guest instrumentalist to kind of make a track with, out of anybody in Scotland, say, who would you pick?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I think Van Ives are really cool. They're a three-piece, and they're quite, if you have a look at them on Instagram, they're pretty creative with like how they layer sounds and things up. I've seen them like sample like car horns and things. But yeah, maybe them. I think they're really cool. And Stuart, the singer, he's got a really cool voice. So yeah, I'd probably say Van Ives.
Oh, interesting. You said, well, apparently, I don't know if you said it or not, but I think I know that you're from Moffat.
Yes.
All the way down there. And how do you get into playing music when you're from somewhere like Moffat? Is there a sort of a first gig or opportunity for you that really made a difference to get you on this track?
Not really. When I was in Moffat, it's so small. There's not really anywhere there where there's like gigs happening or anything. I mean, there was like things at school, but not like a gig or anything. There's not really like a music. There's not a scene there or anything. So yeah, I kind of had my work cut out a little bit when I came to Edinburgh, because I had quite a lot to learn about kind of how it all works, really. So yeah, nothing really happened from Moffat. I was kind of like, just when I was a kid, I was really, really interested in music. I learned piano from quite a young age, and then I was older, I started to sing a little bit more, and then it kind of just came from there. And then when I came up to music college, I was like obviously quite influenced by electronic music, so it kind of just evolved.
And how do you feel about the situation with live music venues at the moment? As an up and coming performer, It must be hard to be named as, a BBC kind of one to watch in 2020, and then by March 2020, all live music venues in the whole country are shut down. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's quite. I have to say, I was quite disappointed when all this happened, but it's the way with everyone at the moment that we all just have to be a bit creative with how things are going to be for the next while. You might as well just get your head around it rather than dwelling on it. Music venues, though, like the industry's in quite a fragile place at the moment, and we need kind of all the help we can get. The venues are really struggling. There was a thing today, you might have seen, let the music play. I think that was a hashtag. Yeah, let the music play. There's they trying to raise awareness that like we need the venues, and there's lots of people who've lost jobs, and it's quite a scary time, really.
Yeah, there's many people to get on it, I think, as possible, and as you say, kind of raise the awareness. And there's lots of live streams going on, and that's one thing which seems to be happening. Here we are. But how is it as a musician doing a live stream? Is it easy? Is it straightforward, or is it tricky?
For me, it's been quite tricky. I'm obviously sat at a piano right now, which is quite unusual for me nowadays. It's quite hard to get things to sound good. Online, it all gets compressed quite a lot. So yeah, it's quite difficult adapting to something new, but we'll get there. It's just going to take a little bit longer.
Okay, great. Well, listen, you're going to play 2 songs for us now, I think. Do you want to tell us a little bit about each of the songs?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of days ago, I put it to my Instagram followers to pick a cover for me to do today. So there was quite a few that came in, actually, that were really good. But I decided to go with one from Manoeuvre. So I'm going to play Holocene by Manoeuvre. And after that, I'm going to do one of my own tracks, Vision of You, which came out in February, I think. Was it February? Yeah, it was around February time. And there's a video online of me playing it kind of with a full electronic setup. So you can see that if you want. But I'm going to play a piano version of it today. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Cool. Okay. Thanks very much.
Somewhere, baby, it's part of me, a part from me. You lay your waste to Halloween. You've lost a friend, it's on his head, it struck the street. You're in Milwaukee off your feet. And once I knew I was not magnificent. Straight above the highway, take it back and stick with us. And I can see for miles, miles, miles. Third lake, it burned away the whole way. Was where we learned to celebrate. Automatic brought the years you took from me. The night you played me lip parade. Not the needle, nor the thread, the lost degree. See, nothing that's enough for me. And once I knew I was not magnificent. Oh, far from the highway, take it back and stick with us. And I can see for miles, miles, miles. Christmas night, clutched the light, the hallowed bright. Above my brother and tangled spines. We smoke the screens and make it what it has to be. Not to know it in my memory. And once I knew I was not magnificent. High above the highway, take it back and stick with us, and I can see for miles, miles, miles. Well, last night I saw a vision of you. Two worlds collide, or is it just my point of view? We only stray away, away from all that we knew. 'Cause in time we won't be present, just like you. Like you, like you. Like you, like you, like you. I'm just here to remind you of what's been there, saying I got what's on your mind. I've been figuring out how to confide all the time. Well, last night I saw a vision of you. Will this reside, or has it gone too soon? If we only could find that the roses still grow from the seeds in your mind, 'cause we're assigned to be present, just like you, like you, like you. Like you, like you, like you. I'm just here to remind you of what's been there, saying I got what's on your mind. I've been figuring out how to confide all the time. If you could see, it's not taken for granted. You know, you've got to take what you're handed when it's all at the rested. I'm just here to remind you of what's been there, saying I got what's on your mind. I've been figuring out how to confide all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. I'm just here to remind you of what's been there, saying I got what's on your mind. I've been figuring out how to confide all the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. I really recommend all you guys check out Emily on Spotify, check out Fourth Daughter on Spotify, and look up her YouTube video as well that she mentioned there, Visions of You, which is incredible, just showing Fourth Daughter with the full kind of setup and with the beats and all the stuff that she was talking about there. Really kind of brings the whole thing into a different dimension, and we're definitely going to get her for Hidden Door. So look forward to that. Well, look, thank you so much for watching tonight. We're doing a little bit of an extended edition this evening because we were really lucky to be able to get hold of a very innovative theatre company from Belfast called Tinderbox Theatre Company, not to be confused with our very own Edinburgh Tinderbox project and Tinderbox Orchestra, but they have an equally catchy name. And the Tinderbox Theatre Company in Belfast have been doing some really interesting stuff online, and we thought we would get a wee bit of a chat with them and find out what they've been doing, because they're doing a live show in 2 nights' time on the 4th of July on Saturday night. It's called Lucid, and it's pretty bonkers, and it's really interesting, and it's a way of showing what theatre can do in these kind of difficult kind of conditions that theatre companies have been left with. But as Tony, and as Tony said, and it's about these limitations make us creative, and this is kind of what's happening now. So Tinderbox Theatre Company are doing this very creative thing. We thought we'd get a chat with them. So we got the artistic director, Patrick J. O'Reilly, to have a little bit of an interview with us. Thought you'd probably be sick of my voice by now, so we got our theatre programme manager, Staci Shaw, to interview him instead. And what we thought we would do now is play the show out with that interview with Staci interviewing Patrick from Tinderbox Theatre Company. We recorded the interview a little bit earlier with Staci kind of firing in the questions. So I'm going to leave you with that just now and say goodbye and say thank you for watching, and also to say a massive thank you for all the team that helped put this show together. Obviously, there's a large amount of people kind of working behind the scenes, and I want to particularly thank Jane to Tony tonight for being our brilliant and calm and very dependable floor manager, making all the nice kind of scene transitions happen and getting us all organised and doing all the sound checks and everything. And obviously we've got a great promotion team working on this as well. Also our fantastic contributors, Esther, Tony, Emily, and obviously Patrick from Tinderbox, who we're about to hear from just now. It's about a 20-minute long interview, so I'd really encourage you to stick around, listen to what they're doing. But for me and for everyone at Hidden Door, I'll say goodnight, and we'll hand over to Staci and Patrick, and we'll see you in a fortnight's time. I think we've got some pretty special stuff planned. We may have some music from our first non-solo band, which is very exciting and breaking lots of new ground for us. But anyway, thanks very much for coming, and as I say, we'll be back in a fortnight's time with more delicious morsels for your creative soul. So we'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Hello, I'm Staci. Thank you for tuning into Hidden Door's New Territory show. Today we have one of Northern Ireland's most established theatre companies joining us, Tinderbox. Running for over 30 years, it has produced and championed new writing from Northern Irish writers, bringing them international acclaim with productions such as The Man Who Fell to Pieces, A Thought for Your Pennies, and Ubi the King. They have created programmes such as Ignition, Play Machine, Fuel, and Engine to allow emerging artists and participants to access their unique creativity in a supportive environment. Their aim is to empower the individual and society through play, engaging with imagination, and sharing stories to unite and celebrate communities. I am very pleased to welcome Artistic Director of Tinderbox Theatre Company, Patrick J. O'Reilly. Hi Patrick, how are you?
How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're really, really happy to have you on the show. It's been ages since I've seen you.
Yes, I believe I was your tutor back in Belfast Met.
Yes.
8 years ago or something.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end up slipping at some point and calling you Podge, maybe.
That's great. Everyone calls me Podge. Everyone still calls me Podge. No, it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
Time flies. It does indeed, yeah.
It really does. Right, I'm just going to jump right in here. You've been our Tinderbox now. Just wanting to talk a bit more about how the company has changed in recent years with your appointment as artistic director. So it's taken more of an emphasis on play and imagination.
Yes, so Tinderbox has been running as an arts organisation for 32 years. which is an incredibly long time. It has an incredible legacy, not just in Northern Ireland, but kind of on an international platform too. And what Tinderbox has always offered and delivered is it's given a voice and a platform to Northern Irish writers, performers, to create work that is very much steeped and made from our society here. And I suppose the evolution of the company has been in consistent development since 1988 in terms of reflecting, having creative responses. And obviously, change is hugely important. So in 2016, when I was appointed as artistic director, I felt it was incredibly important to expand the artistic vision of the company to really look at how we can expand art form, how we can create an ecology of an ensemble practice of making work, and also then taking it back to the simplicity of what Tinderbox was originally set up to create, which is to spark the imagination, to spark potential. And I suppose that simplicity is about using and knowing that we have the imagination to tell our stories, and that should not be defined by particular forms of how audiences like to perceive the work. So the focus on play is incredibly important because that's about deconstructing form. It's about deconstructing our narrative. It's about asking questions, using the theatre medium to find those answers, or never find the answers. You know, that's just as important. And what I'm really interested in is how do we free up the artist? How do we liberate the artist to create work in a creative flow rather than thinking about imposed forms or ideas? I know it's probably quite a very simple analogy, but when we were younger, you know, we obviously played with complete abandon, with complete spontaneity. And the only difference now, as I suppose if we're, you know, adults, is that we now play with our shoulders slightly open so that we can invite our audiences and our participants to play with our material. And I suppose that from that vantage point, it's incredibly important because it's also quite challenging, because people can't have this perception of play as you just run in and you create anarchy and chaos, but it requires a very, very specific discipline of being able to make work in the unknown rather than trying to find the answers or know or do what we've done before. Play does require a very rigorous dramaturgy and artistic practice.
Mm-hmm. I know I still act like a child a lot of the time, so it fades into my practice anyway. Can you talk a bit more about the productions that you're creating now and how the focus on play and imagination is feeding into the choices of the productions that you're creating?
Yeah. So for me, collaboration is the key to producing work at the moment, because it's a collective experience. It's an ensemble, and I feel that it's really, really important to really allow whatever skill or artistry that an artist brings into a room, is that they are given the opportunity to platform that and to use that and to work in parallel with other artists, or to clash or be in conflict with other artists and the idea. And so play is completely free. And what that means is actually it can be quite terrifying, because if process is so free, a lot of people need to be able to let go of what they know and jump into this adventure of the unknown and try not to grasp, we've got that now, we've nailed it, this is what it is, but to always remain in a flux of freedom. And that for me is a strong collaboration, because it's not about one person pulling focus, or you know, that each skill and that each artist is given a sense of breadth and space within the rehearsal room. And that has definitely kind of influenced the work that we have produced since 2016, because I don't have notes. I don't give notes. I don't set up a rehearsal schedule where I know what I'm going to do each day. I understand how I'm going to provoke the room. I have questions, and I have a very strong physical discipline. But at the same time, I kind of keep all that so open that the people in the room are essential to the making of that performance.
Just talking a bit more about collaboration there, because one of the big points of Tinderbox now has become the engagement with the community through workshops and training programs, as well as with the emerging artists. You've got Ignition, Fuel, Engine and Play Machine. So you do. Can you talk a bit more about engaging with the community and how important that is for the company? I think we've also got some images there that we're going to see in a second of Ignition.
So, yes, leading on from collaboration, I think one very important factor to me and to Jen, who's producer with Tinderbox, is that it's important to drop the labels that we have attached to community arts, emerging artists, submerging, re-emerging, and actually to look at each person as a human being, and to present work and to present our workshop programs and our training as a way to bring people into a room and to get a discussion, to open up a space, to create a space that people are able to reach their own understanding of their own story, and then also provide the skills for them to explore their story. Now that can be a play, as if they have a play in their hands, or it could be very much about themselves and what they're trying to discover about themselves. And I suppose that's, in a way, that's hugely, it's one of the strongest core values that we have, is that we do believe that everyone has creative potential. And what does that even mean? In terms of that, there are obviously ranges of experience, ranges of people's genetic makeup, what people their backgrounds, and what is exciting is that you're able to use all those elements that you're kind of always in every workshop going to be creating a unique experience that is valued, heavily valued, because it's about the integrity of the human being rather than the labels that we attach to that human being.
Just to move on there and talk a bit more about what you've been doing during lockdown.
Yeah.
You're one of the earliest independent theatre companies to transfer, working onto a digital platform. It was definitely the first one that I had seen putting anything up. I believe it was mid-March, which is incredibly early. So it is to be putting up work. It was so quick. How have you been able to achieve that during lockdown with all the restrictions, particularly with the solo art project?
I think when you're working in an environment where you're creating new work, you're always responding. So you spend a lot of your career in the air, per se. That there are never really any firm decisions in terms of how the work is going to look or the outcome of your work. And so when you're able to work in that environment where it's constantly kind of you're constantly moving and constantly thinking about new work, when the lockdown, when it became very clear that lockdown was going to happen, I felt it was incredibly important that we had an active creative response almost immediately. And it was the day before St. Patrick's Day, so it was the week even before we went into full lockdown. I just felt that we need to accept the limitations that are currently on us as an arts organisation, and we need to almost embrace those limitations, which sounds really fluffy and like, oh yeah, of course, that sounds really nice, but at the same time, to accept those limitations and then be productive and proactive, and make sure that you are doing everything as an arts organisation to look after your artists. It felt like it wasn't really something that we needed to think about. It was something that we needed to act on immediately. So we had a small pot of money that we had from from training, and we decided that we'd create solo art, which was very, very simple, that we would give 30 artists £100, which is like a day rate, to create something small. It didn't need to be, it certainly didn't need to be a masterpiece. It could just be a small creative gem, a poem, prose, a small piece of digital content. It didn't matter. It was irrelevant. It was more about just offering a point of action to an artist. And then they had like 5 days to submit something, and then we would put that online. We then had a small fundraising campaign where we fundraised £2,000, and then BBC Culture and Quarantine then got in touch and they matched funding. So solo art then became, we were able to offer 100 artists £100. £100 in no way is the value of the work that was created. £100 is basically just 2 weeks shopping, but it just felt incredibly important that we were able to offer something, help in any way. It was incredibly successful in terms of it offered, it wasn't just artists per se. We had to open up, so stage management, technicians, designers also need to be part of that process. And it wasn't a selection process. So I didn't sit and work in a jobs and benefits scheme and started looking at who deserves £100. It was more about, it was on a first come, first served basis, because it felt really important that artists did not need to feel like they were being examined or assessed for their idea at a time when everything had completely dropped off. And a lot of artists were having discussions about how irrelevant their job skills were becoming, or seemed to be becoming, which isn't true, of course.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the only project that you've been working on. It's not just the solar project that you've been doing. You've had other projects going on as well, which is fantastic. Yeah. Can you talk a bit more about those? You've got Repose and you've got Lucid as well, which is a film that you've been doing. Maybe talk a little bit about Repose first.
So Repose, so Arts and Business NI put out a call for arts organisations to create a package of like a workshop package or an online programme where then they would try to attract businesses to generate more income for the arts sector. And so I submitted an idea about creating a sound installation based on the fundamental journey of the neutral mask, and basically then we got a sound designer and we got an actor to create the full journey, which then we put it up on our online shop. But since then, the Belfast Health Trust has taken the Repose because it's very much for people who are living in isolation. It has the unique value of being able to engage in a journey using the imagination, but also we've kind of created a sensory experience that if you're not able to leave your home, you're able to lie down and listen to a journey that takes you from the water right through to climbing the mountains, descending the mountains, and then kind of the last moment obviously is the sun resting on your face. So that was Repose. And then with Lucid, I woke up I think it was 2 months ago, and I went, it'd be amazing if we could all, if me, myself, and the Play Machine Ensemble could meet in a dream to rehearse the play that was cancelled due to lockdown. And so then we set up a Zoom with Play Machine because we were supposed to have Ignition show in May, and that was obviously cancelled. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to try and create a film, documentary, horror / comedy / it was so unknown that we didn't even have a story. The premise was, let's all meet up in a dream. And what happened?
I think we have a couple of images there of it, actually, don't we? I think so. Yeah, there we go.
That's the lovely poster there. That was by an illustrator, Fergus Kelly, who did the Play Machine course. He's also an illustrator, and he did the full illustrations of characters. So basically then Mr. Ruffle, so the story then, I I gave the 11 cast members a project brief, and they had to respond to the project brief every week. And as that was happening, I was then collating the dramaturgy of the work. And then when it finally came to the end, we finally started to pattern together a narrative. And it became very clear that we needed to celebrate the idea that how we were trying to make this was completely ridiculous. We didn't have a film crew. We didn't have cameras. We only had phones. And I set it up that in the project brief, you're not allowed, we have to embrace the limitations of where we are rather than try to create a professional film. Because if we try that, then we're going to end up in a bit of a tangle, because that's not who we are. And so then the whole film became about embracing that entire process of a cast trying to create an online film, knowing that we didn't have the resources to make that happen. And at the heart of that story then became clear that it's just about the frustration and the desperation that we feel during the lockdown to have connection, to have physical connection with each other in a room.
Okay. Just like talking about the digital platforms there again, because I've only got like a couple of questions left. Do you think like the move onto digital platforms at the moment is going to change how we create and engage with audiences, like in the future and like after lockdown there as well?
Yeah, I do, of course. I think everything has an effect, and I think this experience will definitely change how we think and how we make theatre. I think one thing that's really important, though, is that digital theatre or content, online content, does not in any way replicate live performance. And I think that's a very, very important point, because I think a lot of people who are putting online content out, a lot of people are, there's that very, there's an argument happening or debate happening that people are going, stop, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be, theatre's live, it's a live performance, it's a live experience. And I feel like as someone who is engaged with the digital content and also then looking at live performance in terms of mask, in terms of puppetry, is it's okay to try out as many different avenues as we need to. And what's more important, and what's probably fueling the fire even more, is the fact that this pandemic has thrown up a lot of questions about who we are as theatre makers and as artists, as well as society. But in terms of running an arts organisation, there are so many questions that have been thrown up into the air about why we make theatre, who do we make theatre for, how important is it, and how relevant is art in our society. And I'm aware that there are obviously different fractions of Europe, and I know Europe has given a lot of money to making sure that the arts is safe and protected during this time. But in terms of where we are in Northern Ireland, is there is a continual fight, a continual sense of justice and passion to make sure that we are, as artists, visible, really visible. And I think one thing that the online content has actually done really, really well, it has given visibility to so many art forms here. It has given a sense of equality for artists. I'm sure, as most of us know, that when it takes so many years to even get your foot through several doors of whether it's a commercial venue. And I think what the online experience has done is given everyone equal footing, in terms of every equal footing. It's given that sense of strength and equality for every artist to make work. Again, one amazing thing as well about the online experience is that it has freed up actually the limitations that theatre actually gives us. So the fact that it is defined in a space, the fact that we don't need to focus so much on that has freed up the imagination in a way. But also, I think the limitations of online content is also very clear, because we don't have a live experience. We cannot be in the same room. The air that we breathe is not safe if we're together. So how do we embrace both limitations? I think that's the biggest question for me at the minute, is how can we use online content and how we can use live performance to think of a new way, and what does that new way look like? If it's a collaborative, if the ecology is based on equal collaboration, engaging with artists of multi-form and different kind of forms and different stories, how can we create a piece of theatre that takes us into a new realm of digital content and live performance together?
I've just got one last wee question, and then we'll just tie up the interview there. What advice would you give to artists at the moment who are struggling to be creative during lockdown?
That's a big question. I suppose the one really important thing is to feel all the feelings. Don't discount any of your feelings. I know from speaking with lots of artists that there are days where you feel very creative. There's days where you feel completely you don't want to do anything but sit on a couch. There are days you feel rage, anger, passion, elation, euphoria, and I think it's really, really important that you feel all of those and you don't feel less of a person because you don't feel creative. You know, there are certain days where it's not there, and I don't think you need to constantly pushing out this sense of, oh, I don't feel relevant, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel like I need to be writing a play. You know, none of that is relevant. I think what's really important, and this might sound a bit twee, but I suppose for me, I had to go back to the reason why I'm in this vocation and why I've always wanted to do this, and why we've all kept going despite so many kind of obstacles that we face trying to pursue a career in the arts. And I think I had to fall in love again with why I do it. And I think it's really important that we can have those moments where it's not about validation. It's not about people going, your work is good and you're going to get to this level, but actually to spend time each day just falling in love with why you do it by creating something. You know, it might feel insignificant, but it's those small creations that you go, yeah, I was absorbed for a time. I was absorbed in something. So yeah, it feels very important to give yourself that sense of love and care that you need to feel from the inside, rather than thinking about, you know, external influences or what people think about you as an artist. And again, also the financial implications. I think it's been very clear that so many artists do not have financial protection. And I think it's really, really important that there is a call, there is a sense of passion and justice for artists to get together, to connect with each other, and to create a sense of we are incredibly valuable to the sector, to society. And it's very, very important that we rally together and we continue that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what a good answer.
Yeah, it's true. You know.
Right, we've just run out of time there, so we have Patrick, and that it was so glad to have you on and to show a bit of Northern Irish talent on the show. And I hope you'll get over to Scotland one of these days soon.
I'd love to. Absolutely.
Yes, that would be fantastic. I'd love to see Tinderbox like in the Travers or something. We'll have to make it happen. I'll try and make it happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone who's been watching, you can see all of the links you can in below there for following Tinderbox on Facebook and on Twitter, Instagram, and also there should be a link to the YouTube channel where you can watch all of the solo art projects. And
Lucid is on this Saturday again. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So tune in for Lucid on Saturday, 4th of July. It's on at 7 o'clock.
It is indeed 7 to 3 hours. So, it's going to be online. Yeah.
Yeah. So tune in for that. Thanks very much, Patrick.